Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1521A, and today's date is March 14th, 2018, and the title of the episode is, It Has Begun. These Conditions Preceded the Last 7 Recessions. Now, I just wanted to make an announcement. I uploaded a new interview with Bill Holter on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So all you need to do is go over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, it'll bring you to the interview. Or you can come over to x22report.com or newsentinel.com, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You can play the interview right on the site, or go to Steemit, that is steemit.com/at X22Report, and you can play the interview right on Steemit. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we can see, the crypto demonization is continuing. The Bank for International Settlements, they came out, and they pretty much explain why they're very nervous and afraid of cryptocurrency. One, they're nervous that cryptocurrency will basically push fiat currency completely out the window, and there's no reason to have a bank, there's no reason to have a central bank. That's one of their worries. The other worry is that when they bring down the entire system, they're worried that people will be able to push a button and send all their digital currency into the crypto exchanges and remove their funds from the banking system. Now, remember, the bail-in documents that they created was to go into the banks and take your currency because there are no more bailouts. And this is the only way they can save all these banks, because all these banks are insolvent. They just don't have the funds to give out to the people when there's a crash. And the FDIC, that institution cannot come to anyone's aid because they just don't have enough funds to cover everyone. And they're worried about this. Now, they did a test in Cyprus, like we said yesterday, where they basically had a bail-in. They shut down the banks. They imposed rules where you couldn't take your funds out, and this lasted for over a year, and they thought everything was all said and done. Then all of a sudden cryptocurrencies came out, and people have figured out, I can now move my funds out of the banking system completely. Before, this was very difficult to do. You could transfer your funds from bank to bank to bank, but now you can move them out of the banking system. This is why it is such a threat to their existence. Now, what we're seeing, there's the G20 meeting that's coming up. The central bankers, they're going to be discussing Bitcoin, the crypto market. We see Google and Facebook. They have now banned online advertisements promoting cryptocurrencies and initial coin offerings. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't want people to know about it. They don't want anyone to know anything about it whatsoever. And the reason for this is because they know what would happen. And they've been trying to demonize it by telling everyone that it's very volatile. Terrorists use it. It's not really going to be currency. It's created out of thin air. And they kept doing this to try to convince everyone that you don't need it. Now, I speak to people out on the street, and when you mention Bitcoin, some people laugh and they say, oh yeah, it's not that great. I hear it's used by criminals. The younger generation, well, they really like it. So we have a mixed bag right now, and they're trying to convince the entire population not to use it. We see that February retail sales, they have slipped. Now, U.S. retail slipped by 0.1% in February. There are fewer sales at auto dealers and gas stations and department stores in February, causing the overall retail sales to decline. Now, what's very interesting about all of this, and I'm starting to see this in the corporate media, where they're saying, listen, the retail market is declining, GDP is declining, and even though Trump had his tax cuts signed into law, even though they're taking effect, the economy is now declining and slipping. And they're saying that the retail sales arena has been declining for the third consecutive month in a row. And they are comparing it to last year, where they're saying that it was 4% higher from a year ago. Now, let's think about what they're doing, and we mentioned this before. The corporate media is starting to place the blame on Trump. And they're moving and pivoting very, very slowly. If you notice out of the corporate media, they're starting to show that the economy is not doing as well as they were reporting, 2-3 years ago. It's starting to break down. They needed Trump in office. They needed him to pass policies so they can start this agenda to show that the economy is not doing well. This would feed into the central bank, bringing down the system. We see already the GDP. Well, that has fallen. It started out at 5.4%, which we knew which was absolutely ridiculous. It is down now to 1.9%. Now, what's very interesting about all this, Lacey Hunt from Strategic Investment Conference in 2018, an economist and EVP of Hoisington Investment Management, claimed that economics is a science, and today it's more important than ever. Although economics is not, precise as physics and chemistry, he added our understanding in this domain gradually advances. And then he moved into the economic situation. First, he started with the debt situation. He said it's absolutely terrible. Looking from a debt perspective, the situation looks terrible. Citing the law of diminishing returns, he showed how more and more debt is required to boost output. In 2007, global debt was 276% of global GDP. Today, global debt is 327% of global GDP. In 2007, a dollar in debt generated 37 cents in GDP growth. In 2017, a dollar in debt created only 31 cents in GDP. Money supply and bank credit, they are collapsing. And Bill Holter and I had an interview yesterday. I put it up today, and we talked about the credit markets and how they're going to freeze up. So if you want to listen to that interview, just go over to the X22 Report Spotlight, and you can listen to the interview there. He went on to say that, meanwhile, money velocity is at its lowest rate since 1949, adjusting GDP for vehicles. Now, we know that we had natural disasters, and there were a lot of automobiles that were destroyed. About 600 to 700,000 cars were destroyed, and they had to be replaced in the aftermath of these hurricanes that we had. And the GDP was then, adjusted. It creeped up, and everyone thought, wow, look how great the economy's doing. But it didn't hold. This is temporary. What this phenomenon did was to pull future auto sales into the present, and it adds very little value to the economy. It's a good example of the broken window fallacy. So the bump in GDP growth was due to an anomaly, and the overall trend remains constrained. The yield curve, it completely matters, saying that the yield curve is an important indicator to let us know what is happening here. He used the spread between long-term treasuries and the 3-month bill, which has been falling over the 90 months. He suspected that if we get further rate hikes this year, which they're talking about right now, the spread will approach zero and could invert. Whether or not it actually inverts is not important. He said, what's important is the similar conditions have preceded 6 of the last 7 recessions. Basically, what is happening right now is the entire economic system has been set up to fail. This is what central bankers do. They bring down the system. And by raising the rates, by doing everything the central bankers have done, they are now in the process of shutting down the system. Trump is doing the same exact thing. They're in a battle right now to control the narrative. Now, the central bank, they're looking to raise the interest rates once again. If they do this, it is another indicator showing that we're heading in the same exact direction as we did back in 2008, where they're going to push the rates even higher each and every single time, and they're probably going to raise them a lot faster than they've been doing. And there's a reason for this, because they need to control the narrative of the crash. Trump is doing the same thing. He's starting what everyone is calling a trade war. But basically, he's setting up the entire economic structure. Remember, this economy, it can't be repaired the way it is. The system is doomed. The system is a central banking system. So what he did was he enacted Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, which allows the president to do, among other things, impose duties or other import restrictions on the products of foreign countries. If the president determines that the country is violating a trade agreement or engages in discriminatory or other acts or policies which are unjustifiable or unreasonable and which burden or restrict United States commerce, the president has the ability to impose those duties or tariffs restrictions on other countries. This is exactly what he is doing. Now, this Section 301 hasn't really been relied on heavily since the Reagan era. Because what happened was they enacted the World Trade Organization, which was formed in 1995. Why did they form the World Trade Organization? Well, the central bankers wanted to make sure that each and every one of these countries that are around the world didn't do something like Trump is doing right now, because it would mess up their system. Remember, they were planning to create a one world, one monetary controlled system where they're going to bring every country to the same exact level and enslave everyone under their system. And the only way to do this is to take control of each and every one of these countries. And they were going to do this through the TPP, where they were going to have a court system which was on top of which was above the government, which could overrule any government's decision. Well, that was swept away. Remember, everything that they've done was in preparation to control the entire earth and to enslave everyone in their system. And this is why they set up the World Trade Organization. This is why they had these trade deals, because they were in the process of moving things around. And right now, the central bankers, they don't like what Trump is doing. It goes against everything that they've been planning for. This is why the corporate media, which is the mouthpiece for the central bank, the deep state, it's the mouthpiece for all of them. This is why they're out there screaming and yelling, trade wars are coming. But I think behind the scenes, just like in North Korea, I think there's other plans going on right now. And from everything that I've been looking at and everything that I see, I do believe that Russia, China, United States, Trump, they are in talks behind the scenes. This is not out in the corporate media. They know the White House is bugged. They know the phone system's bugged. So they meet in private. They have private conversations, just like Trump had a private conversation with Kim Jong-un to have this peace deal in North Korea. And I do believe, because Putin has taken control of his private Western central bank, the Rothschilds do not make the decision there anymore. This is why they're the enemy. That they're in agreement to bring down the central banking system together. They know it's a problem. They know the central banking system causes wars. They know that the central banking system does not need to exist. And what I see happening right now is they are pushing this move. Now, Trump keeps coming out saying he's going to phase 2 now. There's going to be even more tariffs against China. China, from what I'm seeing, is not going to react. They might react a little bit, but they're really not going to react whatsoever. They're not going to start or have a trade war. They know where this leads if they do. And they know that when everything is all said and done and they can get rid of the central banking system, a new system will emerge. And I believe this is what they're trying to do. Now, the central bankers, on the other hand, they still want their system. And this is why we see this battle going on right now. Now, many people are saying, well, what happened to cryptocurrencies? How does that play any type of role in the new economic system? Well, I do believe that countries are going to be trading at a higher level, and they're not going to use cryptocurrencies. Maybe some countries will, and they might move into that realm, but at a lower level for everyday purchases, for everyday things like that, I think each one of these countries is going to allow the people to use cryptocurrencies to do this. And I think eventually what's going to happen is all these cryptocurrencies will be interchangeable, and you'll be able to use whatever cryptocurrency you want to make a purchase. Now, some companies, some employers will pay you in the ones they like, and others will pay you in different ones. And I don't think there's going to be thousands of them. There'll be a little basket of them, what they'll be using, and they'll all be at different rates, and you can hold different ones. And I do believe that at a lower level, the people will use this. This will not be controlled by the central banks. They will not control it whatsoever. And at a higher level, I think the governments will then use whatever currency system. It might be a cryptocurrency system that they've developed where they can control the trade between countries and things like that, where they're selling oil and things like that, just like we see the petros in Venezuela. But we can see right now we are definitely headed to a very, very big change. And how this turns out, well, hopefully it turns out where the people control the currency. Hopefully the central banks are no longer in existence, because if the central banks stay, if the central banks win this battle, we're back on their system. Nothing has changed. We start all over again. And this is why we need to make sure that the central bank system is not allowed to live on. We see that Rand Paul, he's pushing his audit the Fed bill. Now, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the votes for this bill, because a lot of these government officials, these government employees, they're paid for, they're corrupt, and they don't want to go up against the central banking system. And think about it. If these governmental employees, if they're working for the people and they're working for the United States and the people come first, why wouldn't they want to audit this organization that controls the economy, the creation of currency for the United States? What are they afraid of? Why wouldn't they want to do this? Wouldn't it make sense to audit them to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be? Because they are controlling the entire economy, the creation of currency, controlling interest rates, controlling pretty much everything. Wouldn't you want to make sure that everything is on the up and up in this organization? It makes no sense to me, or pretty much anyone else that I know of, why you wouldn't want it audited. It's like a company. You go in and you have an audit to make sure that the books are all in order. The only reason I can think of is because these individuals are being paid off. They're corrupt. They're in line with the central banking system. And they know if anyone goes and audits the central banking system, we're going to find out a lot more than they want everyone to know. So as we can see, we are headed towards a transition, a reset of the system. And once again, like I said before, it's going to go one or two ways. And we're going to have to see how this all turns out. But you need to be prepared for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.